Thank you, Amir, and welcome to CyberTech Live, our first CyberTech digital event. My name is Julia, and I'm the Director of Global Events here at CyberTech, and we're very happy to bring to you our first digital event to the comfort of your own home or office or wherever you may be. It's unfortunate that we're not able to be together at one of our on-site events, but we are happy to bring to you through this platform the spirit, the community, the ecosystem, and most importantly, the networking opportunities like you would find at an on-site CyberTech event. Before we begin, just a little bit about what you're looking at today. Welcome to our new CyberTech Live platform. On the left of your screen, you will find companies who are sponsoring today. So this is a good opportunity to say thank you to Weil Ventures, Splunk, Holistic Cyber, Simulate, Israel Aerospace Industries, and Team 8. We couldn't do this event without your support. If a participant at any time during the event would like to engage with one of these companies, not a problem. All you have to do is click the name of the company on the left of your screen. Then at the bottom right, a chat box will open and a representative will tell you how you can further engage the company. If for some reason you're unable to engage every company that you wanted to during the event, all you have to do is send an email over to us at contact@cybertechlive.com and we will make sure to send your request in the right direction. So let's jump right into it. Our first speaker of today, our big keynote, Mr. Igal Una, who is the Director General of Israel's National Cyber Directorate. It's a big honor to have Igal with us today, and you may have seen him recently at the CyberTech Global in Tel Aviv. He was a keynote for that event. We're very excited to have Igal sharing with us some of the things that his directorate and some of the steps that they are taking in order to prepare us better for the cyber crisis amongst the pandemic crisis. Igal, please take it away.
Hi, thank you, and hi everybody. It's a little weird to run a speech like that, but hey, it's weird times, and we're trying to adjust, and I hope that we're making it with adopting to the new way of conducting meetings and coming together. And thank you very much, Amir and the CyberTech guys, for having this event. It's really unique and very important, specific in these times to discuss about cyber security, cyber threats, and how to mitigate it. What I try to describe in the coming minutes is how Israel, led by the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, is handling the current situation in the world, and Israel specific, from the cybersecurity perspectives. And I must begin with saying that we always talk about the cybersecurity as kind of epidemic. And I have even slides to show that. But before that, hey, this is how we see today's cybersecurity. It's never a dull moment for our guys, for the cybersecurity, government, private sector, public sector. Everyone is busy with the hands full of work, so no isolation, no relaxing at home or going to think about the future. We are in the middle of a battle, and the battlefield is mixed with many elements, as I'm going to talk about. So when I usually talked about the cybersecurity in past months, even less than a year ago, I described the analogy of cybersecurity as epidemic. Back then, it was, I think, June or July last year, we used the measles epidemic, or pandemic even, to describe the analogy of how cyber epidemics deal with the biological one. Unfortunately, foreseen the future, and now we are handling both the biological and the cyber epidemics, but the need for a vaccine is still there. And we meet all kinds of threats coming from this situation. Talking about the threats and cybersecurity, we must always begin with focusing on the main threats. So we see that the RDP use is up by 41%. Enterprises use VPN up by 33%, and it goes even in higher numbers. Everyone needs to keep on working, connecting from home, connecting from other facilities. Even the INCD is now spread to 5 different facilities, and we need to work also from home whenever it's possible. And it's not only for us. You see the Shodan reports show the exposure, the VPN exposure going rapidly up. And we see immediately, like in the biology world, we see immediately the microbes, the viruses following this phenomena very quickly, even faster than the cure. So we see some of the checkpoint, Kaspersky and others showing how the registration of new Zoom domains, fake Zoom domains are rising up. We see in checkpoint research how malicious discussions rising up and meeting the level of the global trend, the authentic discussions. We see the corona-related attacks, the percentage out of the overall percentage, and it's tremendous. And I feel that we're going to see even more as we read that many students, high school students, and even elementary school students now out of school in these days. So they're bored, they have a lot of leisure time, and they use it, unfortunately, some of them, but in growing portions, to hack or to try to hack, and they cause small damage, but with a mass, with a high volume that brings it to a real problem. We even published our own, you see examples of our own reports of how the corona situation or the corona crisis is exploited and abused by malicious actors, again, from countries, the usual suspects, from the cybercrime, from the state actors, rogue states, and of course with more hacktivists or hackers or bored students, all of the above. So when the INCD first met with this crisis, we still have, let's say, our day job. We still need to protect the critical infrastructures. We still need to do everything that we've done very hectic before the crisis hit Israel. We had the third elections round just in the beginning of March, which seems as the longest month ever. So doing that, we already began to prepare to new missions. And I'm going to show you now the 7 main missions that the INCD took on its shoulders during the corona. First of all, and most important, is to secure the business continuity of the healthcare sector. This is the most important sector now, and some of its parts are already allocated or defined as critical infrastructures, but now the attack surface is much wider and much more danger and need to be taken care of. But it's not, it doesn't stop there. The second is securing the critical supply chains, mainly air and maritime. We just heard that yesterday El Al, the Israeli airline, is beginning to bring in an air train from China by 11 Dreamliners, a lot of supply. Now, this supply should come and get into the healthcare supply chain and to get to the patients, and we need to see that nothing interrupts in the way. Third is, as I mentioned, everyone is going to work from home and to get services from the government and others from home or from not usual places. So we need to secure the eGov services with all remote access, and not only the eGov, but any critical services, banking, for example, to make sure that remote access is not compromised. Another one is fluent, to make sure that there's a fluent and smooth internet under mass telework. We heard about the many countries approaching Netflix and asking, not begging, for reducing the resolution of the series and films to make sure that the internet will go uninterrupted. So there are other dangers, other risks coming to the internet broadband, and we need to make sure that no malicious actors will take advantage and abuse it. Another one is securing the food and medical production and distribution. Israel can produce and distribute most of its needs with the medical supplies and with the food and the beverage and other basic needs. But we need to make sure that all these digital processes are well secured. The sixth one is ensuring the fully operational cybersecurity industry to support public and private sectors. I'm going to focus on that very shortly, but it's very important to make sure that not only the government, but most of the private sector is even some of the public sectors having their cybersecurity services from private sectors, private companies. So we need to make sure that they can still continue to give this service on the highest level. And last but not least is to secure the R&D of the coronavirus solutions, if it's vaccine, biological vaccines, or high-tech solutions. And Israel, as a startup nation and a high-tech country, we have, fortunately, a lot of great ideas. Most of our Ministry of Defense R&D processes immediately diverted to produce and to develop and to find new ways how to identify patients, identify sickness, and how to deal with the vaccines. All these processes are vulnerable. They can be attacked and ransomware and all the other problems that we meet. So we need to secure them. So only 7 missions, but bear in mind that they're all above our day job, critical infrastructures, all the things that we still need to do. So all of this operation needs a command and control, and remember, also are aligned to the rules of social distancing and all these other regulations. And we open a strong command and control. We are part of the short list of the government main agencies that work almost uninterrupted during this crisis. And we deal with a lot of aspects that we haven't dreamt of dealing with it. You see in this slide that some of the numbers, and they are growing on a daily, of numbers that we need to deal with that we haven't dealt before. For example, coronavirus test labs. We have almost 29 of them in Israel. In order to run the tests fluently and continuously without interruptions, we need to make sure that they are not attacked. New subscribers to the INCD risk assessment scanning tool. We have a scanning tool that we showed in the CyberTech in Tel Aviv just a couple of months ago. It looks like decades ago, but it was only 2 months ago. And we already needed to, in less than a month, to get into this system, which is a very complicated system, another 136 of these companies, big companies. We have 17 dedicated alerts. We have 52 new organizations that are now getting what the other critical infrastructure gets. And it's not a simple thing to do, and we need to do it overnight. Joint auditing activities and other, we're going to focus on a couple of them. First is issuing alerts and guidelines. And we immediately began with issuing this, for example, it's in Hebrew. I'm sorry that we didn't translate all of it. Some of it we have, I'll mention it later on. But this is an example of collaboration apps like Zoom that we're now using, or Teams or others, how to use it securely. And as we already know and we see and we even experienced, it has too many vulnerabilities that need to be taken care of, which can be taken care of pretty easily. But the people now, by hundreds of thousands that using it, need to be aware and understand what should they do. Tonight we have the Israeli, the Jewish holiday of Passover, the big ceremony. Now every family will celebrate it separately, but everyone going to join it with Zoom or other kinds of apps. It's a big risk that we need to make sure that no one will take advantage of. Another is phishing, voice phishing, and other phishing issues. As I described, we see it growing by exponential numbers, and we have, of course, best practices and advises how to mitigate it and how to deal with that. And the last here, the last example is how safely work from home. Again, nothing new, but we needed to pack it up and distribute it and push it to the public that they are starving for it. and make sure that it's accessible and everyone can get it very easily and implement it. That's the most important thing. Another thing is, for example, how I describe how to deal with the new high-tech solutions or R&D of vaccines. This is example of the Israeli application, the official application that calls the Hamagen, the shield, that helps everyone to see if they cross the way with a patient or with a sick coronavirus person, and to alert that you crossed the way with this guy, so you need to isolate yourself, you need to check for symptoms and so on. This is, by the way, it's not connected to anything, it's just getting the database of all the epidemic researchers, investigations database, and compare it on the cell phone, on the mobile, with your own data, and it doesn't send the data outside. But as we understand, it can be very dangerous from the privacy issues and other issues. So we engage in the early stages of the design and building of this application. I must say, it delayed the launch of this application in a couple of days, 6 or 7 days, but we made sure, and you see on the right side, one of the Israeli major white hackers, Ran Barzik, auditing it or making scrutiny of this application before we launch it and say, okay, it's good enough. Nothing is perfect, but it's good enough to use. And now it's already spread by hundreds of thousands, and it saves lives, literally. But also secure, not just saving life, but securing the patients, the users from cyber attacks. As I mentioned, the cyber industry is a major, a very critical element in the overall Israel approach and strategy of cybersecurity. So we made a special focus on how to make sure that this industry can continue, still work under these conditions. So on the first night that the government began to issue emergency orders of how the Israeli space, how Israel should work, we inserted the cyber industry, as you can see here, as part of the exemptions, as part of the those who can still, and should, by the way, still work and still be operational during this restraints and this isolation, all the other needs of social distancing and others. So we made sure that all cyber defense, by the way, not only all cyber, but all cyber defense and information security are part of it. And we're still seeing a lot of companies that approach us and ask us for guidance, and we help them on a daily basis. And another example is the cyber industry marketplace. We opened the marketplace, just putting it there, as now is commonly said. It's a marketplace that can meet with the part of the those who sell, the industry, and the customers, the demand and the supply. And we see already dozens of companies that find new customers, new businesses, even during this crisis. International cooperation, as we always say, the international cooperation in general, international, are critical to cybersecurity. So we engage with a lot of activities. One of them is webinars. We already ran 4 webinars about remote work challenges and how to secure them. You see 4 sessions already, maybe today the 5th one. 220 participants, 50 countries. You see examples of how it ran. Whoever around the globe, all CyberTech members that want to join it, please approach us. You have the emails, and we'll be more than happy to arrange even more, to spread the word and share whatever needs to be shared. Last but not least, of course, don't forget in Israel the 119 hotline that is still operational 24/7, now very busy, very hectic. And to conclude it, we are looking forward. Someday, not far from today, I believe, we'll see the day after. And what the day after will look like? Well, that's something that you should arrange another cybertech just to focus on that. It's really, really not just important, but a lot of ideas. The world will not look the same as it before this crisis. And some of the examples, like increased remote functioning, the telework, telemedicine, e-learning, e-gov, all of the things that we now need to work will become the more preferable way to conduct business. The strains on telecommunication and digital infrastructure, we need more than ever 5G, broader bands, cloud computing, and secure ones. Wider engagement and awareness of cybersecurity in crisis. In Israel, in the INCD, we have a full center, or in Israel it's easy because we're in kind of crisis all the time. But this kind of crisis even hit us, and we need to prepare even better for these kinds of what seems to be impossible scenarios. Renewed discussion on privacy versus the public good. We see it in Israel, we see it all around the globe. It needs geolocation, medical data, all of this need to be rechecked and re-looked at. Cyber industry, well, it's a critical supplier. It's part of the critical elements of the society, and we need to make sure it can work and thrive even in these kinds of crises. And last, cyber lessons learned, the TTPs in mass remote functioning conditions, we need to learn it, we need to develop tools and vaccines against it. So, thank you for having us. Remember, this is 7th of April, the annual Op Israel, what used to be Op Israel attacks against Israel. I can say that today passed very peacefully. I hope it will remain like that. And I really hope for everyone remain healthy and happy. Thank you very much.
Igal, if I can ask you a question, if that's okay. First of all, thank you very much. We really appreciate you spending the time to be with us today. A quick question from the crowd. You mentioned that countries now are working together in the fight against the pandemic. I wanted to ask you, and the crowd wants to know, if countries that maybe you didn't work with in the past or weren't always collaborating with are all working together in the fight for cybersecurity and the new threats.
Well, let me just say that, yes, this crisis, the good side of it, it brings people together more than anything before. But yes, the answer is we meet with new people, new friends, that we all share the same problem, to make our societies healthier and safer.
Thank you, Igal. It's good to hear that we're
working
together, because no country is immune to the crisis we are facing now, not just on the health front, but also the cyber crisis that has unfolded due to the pandemic. With that, let's jump into our next speakers. We have some big names for you here, the biggest names when it comes to cybersecurity and intelligence. I'm happy to introduce Mr. Nadav Tzafrir, who is the CEO and co-founder of Team 8. Nadav, who is a former brigadier general, is the former commander of Israel's 8200 unit. After Nadav speaks with us a little bit about leadership in a time of a crisis, he is going to lead a one-on-one with none other than Admiral Michael Rogers, who is the former commander of the U.S. Cyber Command and the former director of the National Security Agency. Nadav, thanks for being here. Go ahead.
So, hi everyone. Happy to have you here at our first digital gathering of the Cybertech. Would be great if we could do it in person, but I think it's important that we do it anyways. These are unprecedented times, and sharing and speaking about the challenges of where we are is paramount and probably more important than ever before. These are definitely hard times. And I think that if you think about our digital history of the last few decades, never ever in human history has confidence and trust in our digital infrastructure been more important than now. I mean, if you think about an alternate reality, all the chaos or the edge of chaos that we have right now with COVID-19, without the incredible connectivity that we have, we'd be in a much more dire situation that we are in right now. And so our jobs, your jobs, has gone from important to critical overnight. The fact that we have 99% of the workforce at home continuing to do not everything, but many of the things that they would have been able to do in their office, face to face, physically, is what's keeping the world moving. And so what you are doing, what we are doing, has become more critical than ever. And our job is to keep the lights on. I think the first thing that we need to do in order to find how to keep the lights on is to try to understand where the threats are coming from. What are the attackers thinking about? And if you unfortunately think about it, Christmas came really early for the attackers in 2020. I mean, if you think about the new types of critical infrastructure, if you think about the home office, if you think about the fact that we have sort of a super evolution where overnight 99% of the workforce is working from home. I mean, think about the opportunities for the attackers as the attack surface, the topology is just exploding and changing all the time. That brings a lot of opportunities. For the most part, we're seeing that our IT infrastructures are working, but let's not forget, we haven't stress tested this environment. And so over time, we're already seeing bugs in the system. But it doesn't matter how beautifully your VPN, your VDI, or BYOD or connectivity is working, we haven't stress tested the system. And so we'll see glitches and blips and even major problems in the future. I think connectivity is the new Achilles heel. I mean, if there's anything that you don't want to see right now or hear right now, the first thing is that you got the virus, your family got the virus, or that your Wi-Fi is out, right? That's sort of the scariest thing, or the second scariest thing that we can think about right now. And to top all that, we must take into consideration that this changing environment in many ways is going to dramatically increase the threat of malicious insiders. I mean, people are working from home. Nobody's overlooking their shoulders and seeing what they're doing. People may think that some things that weren't legit in the office are legit at the home. Some of them will be doing it from a benevolent perspective just because they want to get their work done. Some of them are going to become anxious as the economy deteriorates and may think about doing things that otherwise they wouldn't think of. And so we also need to think about malicious insiders within all this conundrum that we're all facing right now. And so at Team8 and our portfolio companies, we try to imagine some of the immediate challenges that everybody's going to see or everybody's seeing already, and how that's going to evolve in the next few weeks and months. You know, to begin with, the obvious thing, people, right? Your organizations are still made out of people, except that your people, your workforce, is now at home. And so this question of productivity versus security has just become so much more important. And different companies have different solutions. Some of them are more resilient, some of them are not. The other thing that I imagine, or we imagine, you guys are all thinking about, is what happened in this digital fog of war if we have a breach, if we have an incident, and we need to respond. What does IR look like in these crazy times? Another obvious is detection. And so detection has never been an easy task. Our security operations centers have always been overwhelmed almost with a lot of noise from the system, false positives, etc. But in this reality, it's much worse because there is no normal, and most of the detection systems are trying to create some kind of baseline and see abnormal. But if there's no normal, what's abnormal? And there isn't much normal in these times. And then finally, if you think about industrial sites, how do I run my factory, my machines, my SCADA systems, etc., if I can't even touch them, if I don't have the computer that controls them? There are obviously others, but these are sort of major things that we've been thinking about at Team8 and our portfolio companies, and trying to take solutions, ideas, products, and services that we already have and do the adjusting. So at Isolate, which is the Team8 isolation company, one of our portfolio companies, we're creating a light version that can easily take any machine and create a dual environment, one which is completely locked down and one which is more open to take down apps like Zoom, etc. At Signia, which is our IR and consulting firm, we are creating an assessment for work from home so that given this new infrastructure, given this new attack surface, we can assess where we are, where we overlook things, and beyond that, thinking about how do you create a digital war room in this environment? What do executives and leaders in a company think about right now? They're stressed for many more reasons. What is it going to look like if we have to come to a CEO of a company as a CISO and say, well, we have a problem? That's a bad day in the office anyways. How do you deal with it in this kind of environment? How do you prepare for it? And then on the detection side, at Elusive Networks, which is one of our portfolio companies at Teammate, we've always thought that anomaly detection is not the way to tackle detection, but rather using deceptions everywhere in the network. And we think that in this environment, and specifically for malicious insiders, using these kinds of technologies has become more relevant and effective than ever. On the industrial side, we're expediting some of our capabilities for remote access. So the idea is, how do you create a remote access encrypted end-to-end for a critical infrastructure where you can actually take this environment and take it to the work from home environment? All these things are not inclusive and obviously are not addressing all of your problems. But again, we're trying to take the normal, see what we have, how can we adapt? But you know, at the end of the day, more important than anything is that as a leader in your organization, you don't just think about your technical responsibilities, but about your leadership responsibilities. As we say, with great power comes great responsibility. You have to think about your subordinates, your colleagues, your bosses, your family, etc. Because that's what it takes to be a leader in this time. And if you think about the bigger picture, I only want to say three things before I go to Admiral Rogers and get his perspective. But from my perspective, three things. Number one, zoom out. I know that you're under a lot of stress, but every once in a while, you just need to see the big picture. If you're just with your head in the trenches all the time, you'll miss the big picture. And the big picture may be something technical. It may be one of your, one of your execs that's under a great pressure, and that's where you need to be focusing your time right now. Or it may be thinking about the day after. Another thing that you need to think about is new terminologies and frameworks. Your priorities, your terminology, and your frameworks are not necessarily relevant for this time. So if you're just doing everything the same, just from home, please zoom out and rethink about that. And finally, you need to be at your optimal functioning. So you need to take care of yourself. If you're entrenched in this and you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of the business. And that includes big things, but also trivial things like getting enough food, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, and working out. So that's what I have for you today. And with that, I want to invite my friend and colleague, Admiral Rogers, and ask him a couple of questions. So, Admiral Rogers, welcome on board.
Nadav, great to talk to you and everybody listening. I hope you're all healthy and working well as we try to work our way through this, quite frankly, none of us have ever had to deal with before.
Yep. So, Mike, first question. You've gone through a few crises in your lifetime. If you had to give one leadership advice, what's the most important piece that would be in this time of crisis?
Well, I don't know that there's only one thing. If I had to pick one thing, I always said to myself, project the kind of image you want the workforce to then use themselves, the way you interact with people, the things you prioritize on. I always thought to myself, how can I send the right message in every interaction I have with the team make sure we're all on the same sheet of music. We all understand, as we used to say in our previous lives, what commander's intent is. So what's the vision? What are we trying to achieve? And what's my expectation as a leader, and how both myself as well as the team, how are we going to achieve that? Although, I try to remind people, look, there's no one single answer. Last thing I would also mention, and it's something you said, please don't just focus on the technology and the hardware. The single greatest resource most teams have is their people. And people need leadership. And look, this is a time of stress and anxiety for everybody, not just at work, but at home. For many people, they've never had to deal with this kind of thing before. So as a leader, making sure you're not only focused on executing the mission, but also ensuring that your team is there, healthy, and that you yourself are in a position where you can go the distance. Last thing, and then I'll shut up. The other thing I used to tell people in our previous lives, look, this is a marathon, not a sprint. It is not going to last days. This is likely to go weeks and months, and you cannot sustain that if you're not eating, not exercising, you're burning yourself out. I need you sharp, not just today, but a month from now. You can't do that if you make yourself a wreck.
Thanks, Mike. One of the things that probably seem almost irrelevant right now is to think about the new normal, right? Because we're in the midst of a crisis. We've been doing this work from home environment probably in different countries, different geographies, anywhere between a week to 6 weeks. Do you think we should also be thinking about what's around the corner? That is, what's the new normal going to look like, and should we be preparing for it?
Yeah, I think there's really three kind of venues I would expect leaders to be focused on right now. The first, to your initial comments, look, we have all now created a new norm, and we did that in a hurry without a lot of detailed planning, and we threw a structure together to try to meet our immediate needs. So now's the time to step back and say, so in this new normal, what does risk look like? What does opportunity look like? What does resiliency look like? How would I respond to a cyber crisis, to a major intrusion or breach? If you think you can just take the plan that you had 6 weeks ago and apply it now, I don't think that's going to work, because it was built on a totally different set of assumptions and realities. So number one, I encourage you to step back now that we're in this new norm. How do I sustain it? What does risk and opportunity look like? How do I create resiliency so that I can sustain this now with an acceptable level of risk? The second thing I would tell people to be focusing on is, so what is transition going to look like? Because I don't think it's one day we're doing this and the next day we go back to exactly what we're doing before. I think there's going to be some period of transition where you're going to have to sustain both the current approach and then, quite frankly, try to reconstitute much of what you did before. And you're going to be doing that simultaneously, because I don't expect everybody to show up at work at the same time. And then lastly, and this is hard because you're so busy right now trying to look after your people, trying to do those other things I talked about. But to your earlier point, when you get the chance, step back and start asking yourself and the team, so what's the new normal going to be? I need to build to create that new normal, and what can I do now to start laying the groundwork for that?
Right. And do you think amongst or amidst this crisis, which is obviously tough in so many ways, especially the fact that the obvious fact that there are human lives that are lost every day, and people losing their jobs, and in this time of anxiety, as we went through this almost super evolution, where overnight we went to a totally different reality, is there a silver lining that we can think about from an IT perspective, from a security perspective, or beyond that?
No, I think there is. One thing I used to say as a leader when I was running organizations in the military, I used to tell every team I was a part of, we're going to use every crisis to drive change. Folks, there's opportunity here for us, because our chain of command, as we would say in the military, our bosses, our decision makers, they now have an appreciation for us and our mission in a way they don't normally have. Guys, that's opportunity. I would tell every CISO and CIO out there, you have never been more valuable to your organization. You are creating, sustaining, and ensuring the security of the digital backbone that is literally holding most of your organizations together and enabling this kind of remote virtual concept to work, to still generate revenue and business. That means, I think, coming out of this, your bosses are inclined to say, you guys did a great job. I didn't fully appreciate just how valuable you were in many ways. What can I do to try to help? You want to be ready to say, here's exactly what you need to do to help me. So I would say there's great opportunity here. You're going to come out of this with a chain of command or a set of bosses, I think, who are inclined to listen to you about what you think you need in this new world. But it won't last forever because they're so busy. They'll have 1,000 other things they have to focus on. That's why I'd spend some time now thinking about it.
Right. You know, you started by saying that the most important resource that we have is obviously people, right? And, you know, different people react differently to crisis. You know, from my experience, actually, you're usually surprised. You think the most resilient of them out there, and then the crisis comes, and you see different people emerge in different capabilities. I think it also depends, of course, on our own personal situations, right? I mean, some of us have you know, older parents that we're worried about. Some of us have friends that are sick. God forbid, you know, we are sick or somebody from our immediate household. And, you know, different circumstances. But at the end of the day, considering as a working assumption, which I think I totally concur with, this is going to take weeks, if not months. How do you constantly motivate people in this crisis? How do you show people that, you know, amidst a lot of details and what seems to be the edge of chaos, there are some patterns that are starting to emerge? What's your advice to the leaders out there?
So the good thing, to your point, is I always told people in the teams I was a part of, crisis tends to bring out character and commitment. What I meant by that was you get a true sense of individuals when it is really hitting the fan and it is not going well. You get a true sense of character, both individuals, but I would also argue organizations. And then lastly, commitment. You get a real sense of people as well, people's commitment to their teams, but quite frankly, organizations' commitments to their individuals. And you can't forget our either or. So one of the things I would say in terms of how you sustain this is to set realistic expectations up front. This is not going to be days, and it's not going to be a few weeks. Guys, this is weeks to months, and we need to be ready mentally and physically and emotionally to sustain this, realizing that not only do you have stress at work, but you have stress in other things. I think also as a leader, you need to communicate differently. Most people and most organizations tend to define communication as, I'm going to talk to you. Communication in times of crisis means I'm not only going to talk to you, but I am going to listen to you. Tell me what your concerns are. Tell me what's stressing you right now. Tell me what you think is working well and what is not working well. You have to actively solicit that in crisis, because otherwise everybody's head is down. They're just focused on trying to get the job done. They're focused on caring for their family and their own health. Most will not take the time unless you aggressively attempt to reach out to them and ask. So, you know, but like anything, last point, there's a chain of command that we all know, and then I used to kid the team, and then there's the reality. One of the things I always did as a leader, I always tried to identify the individuals of influence. I would watch how the workforce really responded to them when they would say something. And I would tell my, you know, immediate chain of command, those influencers are every bit as powerful to our ability to deal with this as are the, quote, people in the key jobs, like in the formal jobs, CIOs, CISOs, operating officers, risk officers, CEOs, etc. I used to try to identify those influence individuals, so to speak, and then I constantly would try to communicate to them because I realized they had an impact across the organization that far transcended the, quote, formal chain of command, if you will.
Thank you, Mike. Do you think that before we let everybody go on to the other speakers, you know, something that we haven't covered, where like from where we come from and what you see the world looking like right now, any other thought or piece of advice?
So clearly the world of the future, I suspect, will be somewhat different, but I expect those differences to vary by sector and vary by the nature of the job. So I'm a little bit leery. I'm hearing a lot of people say, well, this is automatically going to happen, or this is automatically going to end. And I'm like, I think there's a little bit more finesse to this. So I urge us to step back and get some perspective before we start running off and just say, hey, this is automatically how things are going to be. But like I said, I also think there's great opportunity here. So I always encourage leaders, take advantage of crisis to drive to a vision. You know, I used to tell my teams, my goal as a leader, I want us to be stronger coming out of this than we were going into that. And they would often look at me and say, really, sir? And I would say, yep, because there's opportunity here, guys. We're going to get resources. We're going to get attention. We're going to get priority that we might not necessarily enjoy every day. I intend to use that to create a norm that's better than the one that we had before, and to drive the changes that we know we need to make that, quite frankly, in a day-to-day non-crisis environment, people are either too busy to do or they're not inclined to do.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Admiral. Pleasure as always.
Thank you. Thanks, Nadav.
Thank you, Nadav, and thank you, Admiral Rogers. Just as a reminder, if you are interested in speaking with any of the companies like Team 8 during the broadcast, all you have to do is hit the name of the company on the left of your screen. A chat box will open on the right, and you can start to engage with a representative. So let's roll right into it. Next up, I'm very excited for our next speaker because I've seen her speak at many cybertech events around the world over the past few years. Ms. Esti Peshin is the General Manager of the Cyber Division at Israel Aerospace Industries. She's one of the leading cyber ladies and one of the top executives in cybersecurity from all of Israel. Esti, thank you for being here. Big thanks to Israel Aerospace Industries, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Julia. Good afternoon, everyone, and hello from Ashdod in Israel. I hope this presentation finds everyone safe and healthy, and thank you, Cybertech Online, for this amazing opportunity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the world is changing. The way we are doing business is changing. We can see a huge impact of the coronavirus crisis on the stock market, but it is also impacting the way we are performing our work activities. First and foremost, we are seeing large-scale work from home. Basically, we are working at a reduced capacity here at ELTA, but there are many organizations that are working only from home. So we are adopting work from home capabilities. We are seeing heightened activity of customer-facing networks, greater use of online services, and finally, BYOD is king, bring your own device. We are seeing an increase in the use of personal devices and personal email for work-related activities. Now, the bad guys, the adversaries, are aware of this trend and are taking advantage of these trends in order to gain a financial or other advantage. They are basically cyber attacking these infrastructures. Now, we are seeing various types of cyber attacks. We're seeing an increase in phishing attempts. We are seeing an increase in cybercrime, including ransomware attacks, including on critical infrastructures like the health infrastructure. We're seeing targeted intrusions and attackers targeting remote services. And finally, we're seeing the phishing attacks. Phishing attacks are voice phishing attacks, where a phone call is utilized in order to basically get a person to do something they don't really want to do. Now, we are seeing, for example, an increase tenfold of the number of domain registrations related to the coronavirus. Now, in the past 3 weeks, and these are statistics provided by Checkpoint, we have seen 19% of these domains as malicious domains. Just to give you a comparison, before it was only 0.8%. We are also seeing attacks against the healthcare ecosystem. Now, this is extremely cynical, but we have seen, for example, an attack on 13th of March against a Czech hospital, which actually caused a delay in operation, a delay in activity. We have seen an attack against the Paris Hospital Authority. This was a DDoS attack. It didn't actually succeed on the 22nd of March, but it shows you what the attackers are trying to do. Now, when we are looking at it in the national context, we need to understand that we need to balance between the business continuity and the cybersecurity. we must continue to do our work. We must continue to operate, but we must do so in a secure manner. So what nation states must remember is that when addressing national-grade cyber challenges, they need national-grade cyber solutions. These solutions incorporate state-of-the-art technology coupled with effective methodology on how to use the technology. Constant innovation, because the threats are constantly evolving, even now as we speak. The attackers are aware of the coronavirus threats and opportunities and are utilizing them. We need collaboration, information sharing. In a similar way in which the healthcare ecosystem is sharing information about the pandemic in order to be able to fight it better, the cyber global ecosystem must continue to share information in order to combat the coronavirus-related cyber attacks. And finally, capacity buildup. But here, in the coronavirus era, awareness is king. Everyone must be aware of these cyber attacks, starting from our children, the entire population, enterprises, critical infrastructures, and governments. Now, taking this to a practical level, what needs to be done? First and foremost, awareness campaigns. Make sure that everyone is aware of the inherent threats in cyberspace. Make sure everyone is aware of the increased number of phishing attempts. Make sure children that are utilizing social media are aware that the bad guys can masquerade their friends and cause damage within the social networks. Baseline security is also important. If you communicate from home, well, you better use a strong password. And no, password is not a strong password. Neither is the name of your husband, your wife, your children, your dog, or their respective birthdays. A password should be a strong password. If you're using a Wi-Fi network, it better be an encrypted network. You should employ an antivirus, maybe also a firewall. This is the baseline security. If you're using solutions for remote work and services, well, make sure they are secure solutions. Predictive analytics is also important. This is important at the national level. You need to be able to predict cyber attacks, to achieve cyber early warning. This basically is done by looking at a lot of data, identifying anomalies, and identifying indicative signals that a cyber attack is going on, especially a complex cyber attack. The medical ecosystem must be protected as well. There are countries in which the medical ecosystem is not considered a critical infrastructure. Well, now they are. So they need to be protected. They need to be resilient. We need to make sure that the cyber attacks do not debilitate them. And finally, the procedures and playbooks must be adapted in order to be able to address cyber attacks when they happen. So to summarize briefly, situational awareness, be sure that you are able to understand when you are being cyber attacked. Number two, advanced incident response capabilities. If you are attacked, be able to address this attack quickly and effectively. And finally, information sharing. Make sure that the entire ecosystem is aware of the cyber attacks, is aware of the indicative signals in order to be able to counter cyber attacks at a global level. Finally, it's crucial to achieve a balance between cybersecurity and business continuity. Neither can exist without the other. A few words about IAI. Israel Aerospace Industries is one of the largest defense industries in Israel. IAI is proud to lead the Israeli Cyber Companies consortium comprising of 11 leading Israeli companies, including cybersecurity giants like Checkpoint, CyberArk, and Verint, and including some Israeli startups. Together, we are able to provide end-to-end cyber solutions for national level end users. IAI is also the leader of IACCC, the Israeli Aviation Cyber Companies Consortium, a consortium aiming to provide end-to-end solutions for the commercial aviation ecosystem. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me summarize with a few takeaways. Number one, cyber is a crucial pillar in the battle against the coronavirus. Number two, we are seeing a host of advanced cyber attacks of cynical and malicious individuals who do not understand the need for a global, unified fight against the coronavirus. We're seeing built-in vulnerabilities in the way we are doing business today. You need a collaborative approach on the one hand and advanced capabilities on the other in order to effectively fight these cyber attacks. And finally, we need to achieve a balance between cybersecurity and business continuity. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to communicate with us, to connect us in case you have any questions or any requirements regarding cybersecurity. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude my remarks by wishing you all a happy and healthy Passover, a happy and healthy Easter and Ramadan Kareem. Thank you very much.
Esty, thank you very much. I have a few questions from the crowd, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the first being, do you think that nations are prepared? Have we come prepared to this war against the pandemic?
Well,
If from a security standpoint, of course.
I cannot answer in the healthcare context. I can answer in the cybersecurity context. I think that the cybersecurity community has been working together very, very effectively in terms of information sharing on a national level and on a global level. The cybersecurity community does have effective technologies in order to support the heightened communication, the heightened work from home capability. So yes, I think we are prepared. The only question is if we are quick enough on the uptake in order to deploy these defenses in time in order to protect against the cyber attacks. Because we're seeing a rise in the attacks, we need to make sure that the defenses are in place in time.
Great. Well, that answered the questions. Esty, thank you very, very much for being with us today, and a big thanks to IAI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia.
Let's jump into our next speaker, Mr. Ran Shahor, who is the CEO and co-founder of Holistic Cyber. And specifically, Mr. Ran Shahor is the former commander of Israel's Special Forces Unit. We're very happy to have Ran here with us today, and thank you to Holistic Cyber for sponsoring. If at any point during the broadcast you would like to speak with Holistic Cyber, just make sure to engage them through the platform. Ran, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you all healthy and safe. In the last few weeks, we are all going through this sad global crisis. And as professionals, we ask ourselves what can be done in the cyberspace. But let's have a few words about the cyber world before this crisis, which is relevant. So we were living in a world where the balance between attackers and defenders was totally broken a few years ago. Attackers became much more aggressive and sophisticated and bold, and defenders could not react properly. From the attacker side, we're talking today about attackers that are using extremely powerful and sophisticated nation-state-owned attack tools that were leaked to the darkness. In addition, many of them are supported, backed, and sometimes instructed by nation-states. Defenders could not react properly, mainly because of fundamental shortage of cybersecurity experts. But the main challenge is that today there is an understanding that the only way you can cope with this level of sophistication and aggressiveness is if you can think like the attacker. And the only efficient way to think like the attacker is if you have an attacker background yourself. And exclude Israel when the ecosystem is different. In the Western world, to get a person with good attacker background is either impossible or very, very expensive. Going back to the crisis. Now this crisis, the enemy is external. So we could all expect nation states will be united, trying to combine forces, to share information freely, to resolve this issue together. Unfortunately, this is not the case. It is almost the opposite. Putting aside the medical community, countries are blaming each other, conspiracy stories, not sharing information, and we all know that geographical tension and economic welfare is a very good source of nation-state cybersecurity attacks. And we all need to assume that new players are going to join this party. I just read a phenomenal article at the New York Post telling how the local mafia is desperately looking for new sources of income because they lost the old one And what is more immediate and more profitable than cybercrime? Now, I can tell you from my own experience as the head of the attackers in the Israeli military many, many years ago, that attackers are attackers. They will always take advantage when the defender's attention is elsewhere. It took place in the past in many cases. One of them is the Bangladesh bank attack when illegal transfer of $1 billion took place at the Chinese New Year celebration, and it was a weekend as well. But the COVID-19 crisis is a totally different magnitude. Within days, 90% of the companies need to work from home. Back-end professionals are very far from core. Privileged access personnel need to work from home. On-prem have become off-prem. Zoom is a wonderful opportunity for attackers. So no wonder phishing is on the rise. We know it from our sources, but you can all read NSA, CIA, McKinsey report, and the like. And unfortunately, it is going to be even worse. So bottom line of today is that anyone, everywhere, is a target for nation-state grade attacks. No wonder CISOs are extremely worried all over the world from internal and external reasons. Externally, they need to assume that a successful phishing campaign was launched over their company. And they know that geopolitical tension will create more and more cybersecurity attacks. Internally, they need to do the work with reduced budget and probably smaller internal cyber defense teams. But have they lost the war? Not at all. Let's see what can be done. And the principles are almost painfully simple. Defend what matters. Prioritize. Take calculated risk. Because there is no such thing as zero risk. And if you try to be in zero risk, you are actually taking much larger risk. Be practical. Use technology in order to be more and more efficient. And these are not slogans. This is a call for action. This is the beginning of a wise defense plan. Let's see now what qualities a CISO needs to make sure its trusted advisor has. So first of all is the team. And I'm talking about world-class cyber experts with proven attacker background. Number two is methodology. In holistic cyber, we call it OFM, Offensive Framework Methodology, meaning we act as your defender, as your trusted advisor, but we do it from the attacker point of view. This allows us to prioritize. Knowing the attacker would allows us to take calculated risk. Additionally, you need to make sure your defender is adopting an holistic approach, dealing with the HR, supply chain, and the like. And obviously, you need to have very good access to darknet intelligence and to technology in order to be more efficient. Going back to the bottom line. If we do not prioritize, if we do not take calculated risk, we are actually taking much better risk, much bigger risk. Because trying to defend everything is as if you are defending nothing. Be better protected. Be better protected than your industry. And this is doable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you to Holistic Cyber. If you're still with us, great, because now we have one of the most exciting cybersecurity companies coming out of Israel, in my opinion. Next up, we have Simulate. And we have none other than the co-founder and CTO of the company, Mr. Avichai Ben Yosef. For those of you who don't know, Simulate is one of the leading attack breach simulation platforms, showing your company your vulnerabilities and, of course, telling you how to fix it. Avichai, please go ahead.
Thank you, Julia. So my name is Avichai Ben Yosef. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO here in Simulate. And today I'm going to talk to you about continuous security validation. In times of crisis, of course, but basically anytime, because anytime it's important to continuously validate, how secure are you. And this is where I'd like to introduce you to my company called Simulate, which is a breach and attack simulation platform, SaaS-based, which means that it's accessible 24/7. And it actually allows to continuously validate that your security controls are actually blocking the latest threats out there, that your infrastructure is well configured to deny different kind of attacks. And this is exactly where our platform comes into place. And this leads me to the first slide that I would like to kind of show is where we can actually give different kind of capabilities to both of the teams inside the organization, both of the security teams. So first it will be the blue team as the actual team that is there to make sure the defenses are in the right place, their defenses are configured in the right way, and we can actually enhance their capabilities to make sure that they have more than just the way to block different kind of attacks, but they can actually have a way to validate those attacks are actually blocked. The security controls are well configured, the right alerts are being triggered to the right detections, and this is where we can actually help out. And there's also the red team where we will definitely help out by giving them more frameworks and more tools and more automation so they will be able to actually craft different kind of full kill chain scenarios, simulate full APTs the way they like it, and maybe create their own customized one, and also give them a way to have the abilities to make their time um, with a lot less effort. So having said that, we are actually going inside and focusing on different kind of places where you want to simulate to validate how secure are you from your infrastructure, which can be on-prem or cloud-based. It can be your security control. So you're deploying different kind of security control, security products. You want to understand how well are they actually protecting my organization from different kind of attacks. Your employees, they are also can be different kind of the weakest link in the chain, as I like to call it. And you want to understand how aware are they for different kind of phishing-based attacks. And also, intelligence, because at the end of the day, there is a lot that attackers might know about you that you might not know that they actually know all of this stuff. So it can be leaked password that got online or email addresses that got compromised and can be used by attackers. And there is different kind of information that attackers can collect to make their life a lot easier when they want to attack an organization. But it's not only about what we can do, Simulate as a breach and attack simulation platform. It's also about your security ecosystem, because at the end of the day, you want to integrate with your different solution. It's currently an ecosystem, not just one security product that controls it all. So we also offer different kind of integrations to SOAR solutions, SOC automation, SIMs, EDRs, vulnerability scanners, we can simulate different kind of attacks. And with an integration to the vulnerability scanners, we can actually correlate the results to give you a better picture of how secure are you. And at the end of the day, there is the outcome. So what do you get from that? So it can be, quantifiable metrics, KPIs, technological results. So you can actually get mitigation, remediation, and remediation, recommendations. So what you want to do next in order to actually create maybe different kind of procedures to make sure your organization is safer than it used to be. So having said that, jumping to my next slide, this is how we've actually implemented the different that use case that I've actually just now explained. So we started off with recon, so trying to get as much as info as we can about the organization, trying to understand, what are those exposed to the services that you got online, which kind of password got leaked, and then we can, of course, use them as we go. And once we kind of go inside, we can see that we can test the email gateway. So basically answering the question, if somebody wants to send an email with a malware to one of your employees, will your email gateway block it? Same with web gateway. If users are browsing the web, going online, can they download the malware? Can they go to a phishing website? And will your web gateway actually protect them? And of course, one of the third, we'll say, penetration vector as kind of the, maybe again, a very common one would be web applications. So if we got web applications, that they're protected by a security control, the web application firewall, that should actually block, malicious requests when they are being sent to the web application. And you want to understand, whether or not your web application firewall is actually doing its job right, blocking those requests. Going inside, so if I've already known, on the email gateway, we can test out if somebody can send out a malicious email. On the phishing, we want to understand who is more likely going to click on it. And this will lead me to the next one, which is endpoints. If somebody actually got an email with some social engineering and a malware bypass your email gateway, will your endpoint security will be that next layer of defense to actually block that malicious activity. And this will lead me to the next one, which is lateral movement. So once we've got in and we've tested that, and we've tested your endpoint and actually shown you how can we stay in, lateral movement will also give us the idea of how could we have pivoted inside the network, how far could we have gone, could we have reached your crown jewels. And at the last stage, that will be data exfiltration. So once I've shown you all of that, exfiltrating the data back home will be the next stage. And all of them are following the full kill chain from initial foothold, as I explained, to network and propagation and to actionable objectives. So to sum up, we are, during those times of crisis, we want to be helpful here in the market, and we already offered some free usage of our platform. So a couple of our modules are free of charge for 2 weeks. We're going to give it, if somebody definitely will be helpful to sign up and use that for 2 weeks. We also give 2 months of immediate threat intelligence, which is also getting the intelligence of what's going on around the world, which kind of malicious activity is going around, and of course the simulations of it that you can test out your security infrastructure and posture. And also a part of that will be using one of Simulate's experts that will walk you through using the product, using the simulation, remediating the different kind of results you get from the product, and actually helping you work your way around the different kind of, I would say, security exposure during these time of crisis. So happy to suggest and we're happy to follow up with anybody that likes to. That was me. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Well, great. Thank you, Avichai, and thank you to Simulate. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our broadcast, and I know that it's cliche, but we really do save the best for last. And now we have a special one-on-one session being led by Wild Ventures. Specifically, we have Mr. Yoav Leiterstorff, the managing partner of Wild Ventures, together with Mr. Sunil Yu, who is the former chief security scientist of Bank of America. Something interesting about Yoav, he's really a pioneer when it comes to cybersecurity and cybersecurity investments. He's been doing it for over 25 years, and he's really one of the original guys in the game. They're going to talk a little bit about, actually might surprise you, investing in cybersecurity might be a great idea right now. So please, Yoav, take it away.
Julia, thank you very much for introducing us. Actually, it's funny, but we've just introduced, timing is perfect here. We've just announced that Sunil Yu is now our CISO in residence as well, as of this week. So Sunil obviously has over 30 years of experience in driving innovation to meet emerging cybersecurity needs. Most recently as Chief Security Scientist at Bank of America, as Julia has mentioned. But from this week, he's also he's now CISO in residence at Wild Ventures, which is great for us because now all of our portfolio companies and prospective portfolio companies have access to Sunil, which of course is a treasure for us and for our founders. Sunil is the mastermind behind the Cyber Defense Matrix and the DIE Resiliency Framework, which he's invented and has made known recently, and which will be used a lot at Wild Ventures as well. Sunil's got 22 granted cybersecurity patents and has cybersecurity certifications, including CISSP and GSCC as well. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to interview Sunil here at this forum and discuss the challenges and opportunities that have presented themselves in the industry as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. So Sunil, thank you for joining us here.
Great to be here.
As an early stage investor, I see a lot of cybersecurity startups facing new challenges, especially in communicating with customers and anticipating a slowdown in sales. Sunil, how should startups engage with customers during these difficult times?
Oh, great question. Well, in our community, there's an old adage that we should never let a crisis go to waste. But let's understand what we do in a crisis and how leaders work to ensure that a crisis doesn't actually go to waste. And of course, we want to remain sensitive to how frightening and confusing this pandemic is for everyone. I mean, real lives are at stake and people's economic future is at risk, so I want to be sensitive to that reality. That said, the COVID issue can really serve as a template for how to engage customers during this time. With the COVID crisis, the response need is obviously urgent and immediate. And in the very short term, for those responding to the people that have been affected, they don't need unproven capabilities. They really need things that are certified and approved. Otherwise, they could face some significant liability. If you think about, for example, the suppliers of medical equipment and the desperate need for personal protection equipment and ventilators, there's a lot of exotic treatments out there and non-medical masks available. But those aren't actually approved for use. And even if you think you're making the next best thing out there, the medical professionals can't put it to use until it's been proven. And so to relate to this to cybersecurity, when we have an incident, in the immediate term, we need proven solutions that we know will work and that will enable us to treat infected systems. And when dealing with the infected, when your customer is in crisis, this is not the time for people to come in who have the next greatest thing to come in and propose a totally unproven solution. Oftentimes, we already know what we need to do and the tools that we need. We just need to do it at a greater scale. But unproven capabilities is not what we need at this time. Now, there is a place for innovation, though. And I think, again, the COVID crisis gives us a pretty good understanding of what type of innovations really, really matter. One thing that really does help during this immediate time frame is testing, right? Testing is extremely important because we need to know the extent of a breach. We need to know if a particular system is infected or not. But we absolutely cannot deal with false negatives. And false positives are going to be problematic too, because they're ultimately going to consume response resources. We might be short-handed with those. So if we come across something that's novel and we don't have a test for discovering it, then that is where we can immediately implement new testing innovations. But again, as long as it doesn't create false negatives or too many false positives. After the immediate crisis is over, we as leaders can then often reflect on what capabilities could have averted the crisis. That retrospective look is something that we don't want to neglect, and being able to understand how an incident arose is something that we want to be able to retrospectively look at. Now, this is an opportunity for us as leaders to not waste the crisis and, again, address some long-standing needs. But for some organizations, that opportunity actually may be like right now. The pandemic has affected organizations unequally. And as we all know, there are some industries that have been hit pretty hard and are suffering significant loss of business. A small silver lining in this terrible situation is that any organization facing an extensive reduction in business can perhaps refocus their time on long overdue maintenance or upgrades or significant changes in architecture. And these changes in architecture in particular will need to focus on cost savings, because the outcome of this pandemic is that many organizations are just going to be tightening their belt as it pertains to spending. So we certainly believe that cybersecurity is still going to remain an important issue. So we just need to make sure that we're prepared to be able to offer solutions that can help them meet their new budgets, whatever they might be. If they get drastically reduced, then again, we just need to be able to come in with solutions that can help them address whatever cost reductions that they're going to face. And ultimately, if one of the things that always helps in any situation is when we can remove capabilities. So if we have two products that do the same thing or do overlapping things to replace it with one product that can do a broader set of things. And any entrepreneur that can come in and make that claim, well, we have to test that to make sure that's really the case. But we do want to make sure that in any economic climate, but in particular this coming one, we want to be able to see entrepreneurs come in that offer ways that an enterprise can save money. Because we should expect to see significant pressure as it relates to the costs that we incur today, given the economic conditions that we're going to see.
Great, Sunil. And just to add a little bit more color there, as you know, we invest only in cybersecurity companies, right? And we always begin investing at seed stage, but then of course we participate in all follow-on rounds, and we do focus on startups that are originating in Israel. So, you know, some of the advice that we've given our portfolio companies in terms of how to conduct themselves during this crisis is obviously to avoid any tactics that lean heavily on the COVID-19 messaging. So, you know, avoid fear mongering and all that. You know, build goodwill with customers by and also prospective customers by providing free content, even free software, free solutions. So definitely supporting the healthcare vertical, supporting local clinics and the like. Kind of doubling down on existing relationships as opposed to, you know, focusing too much efforts on creating new ones, because new customers, you know, new relationships is going to be very hard right now. We also advise our companies to introduce customers to each other, their customers to each other, so that, you know, we can create more groupthink and groups that can support each other. And of course, you know, heads down, focus on building amazing products so that when the crisis is over, you know, they can really shine. A lot of this is covered in our CISO current report, which we actually, the most recent one we just put out about 4 days ago. So, Sunil, what do you think the cybersecurity community can learn from the current COVID crisis?
Well, I think there are many parallels that provide opportunities for us to learn about how to do cybersecurity better based on the COVID crisis. And whether that's communicating awareness, getting buy-in for very, very painful containment measures, or how leadership should prepare for events that could generate really significant negative press coverage. So on awareness, I think it's extremely important that the messaging is consistent and that it comes from the top. We can't have experts say one thing while the CEO says something else. If you really want to know that an organization takes security seriously, then you'll want to hear that consistent messaging from top to bottom. On containment measures, I found one approach to be particularly helpful, and it was in this one article called The Hammer and the Dance. The Hammer and the Dance. It's a great article on the whole COVID-19 response efforts, and I strongly recommend reading it. And in this particular article, the author proposes a way to characterize various preventative measures and their corresponding economic costs. What was particularly helpful in this depiction was a clear understanding of what early preventative measures could have actually helped us do to avoid harsher measures with more significant economic impact. The decisions, the really hard decisions to shut down major parts of the economy can have really significant unwanted consequences. And the decision framework that I saw in that paper, that article, is something that I think security practitioners should use to convey what sort of preventative measures are actually available to decision makers. And security startups can really use this same decision framework to help characterize how they contribute to addressing the problem while trying to minimize business impact. And then on leadership, how we should prepare, well, it's evident simply from the numbers seen in different countries what a big difference good leadership can have when it comes to having leaders that anticipate the possibility, understand the current situation, and convey a plan to get through the challenge. The COVID issue is what we in the risk management practice call a gray rhino. COVID is not a black swan. A breach is not a black swan. These are all gray rhinos that we see stomping and huffing and ready to charge at us. We just don't know when. But when it does, having leaders who are prepared makes all the difference.
Absolutely. And Sunil, final question: what are your perspectives on early stage investments in the COVID-19 era?
Sure. Well, Warren Buffett once said, be fearful when everyone is greedy and be greedy when everyone is fearful. I mean, when's the best time to invest? It's when the market is down. And there's a long list of really, really great companies that started during a recession, such as Disney or Microsoft. I mean, I think Disney even started right as the Great Depression in the United States started. So if you have enough capital to make it through the downturn, and a great idea that you believe will make a difference, then this is actually a great time to be an entrepreneur because you'll be at the front of the upswing when we get back to our new normal.
Absolutely. And as cybersecurity investors, we always think, cybersecurity is not going away. It's certainly a sector that thrives during times of crisis. We've seen cybercrime only increase since this particular crisis started. So it is a great sector to be investing. I got to say, in our business, it's business as usual. I've never been busier. We just closed a new investment last week, and two follow-on investments of our portfolio companies. And so, this is a busy time. We're not expecting the pandemic to influence early stage investments, which is what we mostly focus on, as they do with later stage investing. We're more capital efficient over this end of the spectrum, focusing a lot on product development and R&D, rather than big spendings on sales and marketing. And also, we believe that at this time, VCs, investors should support their existing portfolio companies and help them weather the storm, whether that's putting in more money, doing internal rounds, and providing value-add resources as we do. To help guide them, looking through their budgets, doing their marketing for them, things like that. With that, I'd like to thank you, Sunil, for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure, and I'd like to thank CyberTech for having us, and looking forward to being in touch.
Thank you, Yoav, and thank you, Sunil. It's nice to hear at the end of the event that it's business as usual. I think that's comforting for everybody listening today. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen, our first CyberTech Live event. If you like what you saw, great. We have many CyberTech events coming up after the holidays, so stay tuned for more information. If for some reason you were unable to engage with one of the companies during the broadcast, just shoot us an email, contact@cybertechlive.com, and we will take care of it and send that email to the company of your choice. For those of you who are celebrating holidays in the upcoming weeks, happy holidays. Again, a big thanks to our sponsors, Splunk, Wild Ventures, Team 8, Holistic Cyber, Simulate, and Israel Aerospace Industries. We look forward to seeing you all at the next CyberTech Live event. Thank you very much.
אבל המחשב פה, וצריך, אני מכינה את הבית לשטיפה. והמטה מחבר שם. תראי הולכת עם הגרביים שמרגיזה אותי. איך היא מרגיזה אותי? נו. המדבקות שלהם מפוזרות על הרצפה. מה קרה לעמליה? מה, ריבונו של עולם, מה קרה? מה קרה, עמליה? מה קרה? מה קרה? מה, הנה, רוצה? מה? מסריחה הצמיחה הזאת, כל אחת נדבקת לצמיחה מסריחה. מה זה? והשיש, השיש. מה? המחם עשיתי, הכיור והשיש צריך, ברור. והפלטה והקיריים של השתיים. כמה עולה שש? לא צריך לבדוק. אני לא יודעת, כי לא הייתי באושרן. ידעתי שהיא לא תוכל. סתם, זה דארס שלם. והחדרים מוכנים. כשאני אסיים לארגן את הבית, תעשה בדיקת חמץ, אחר כך אני אשטוף. ככה. אני לא, קשה, אני תבין, אני עושה וקשה. קשה. אני גמורה, יש לי לחצים בבטן התחתונה, ואני עושה כי אין ברירה. אני עושה. זהו, אני עושה. בסוף מפה עד הודעה חדשה, והם על הראש, ובאמת שבא לי לבכות כבר. באמת בא לי לבכות. תודה, כן. שירה קומי. קומי אני נקיה פה בעד החזרים. אני צריכה לנקות לפסח, קומי. בואי נלך לשמיכה. כי אתם אוכלים פה, חכי.
צריך לנקות את המחשב גם, שכחתי. אז לא ראיתי מה עשתה. מה עשתה שם? לא ראיתי. עם שירה, אני לא יכול להיות עם שירה, משעמם גם.
Hello everybody and welcome to the first ever CyberTech